Hey everybody, Hey everybody, it's Todd DeVoe from EM Weekly, and this month Barb Payne is talking about tsunami awareness. It's actually the 10th anniversary of the tsunami that hit Japan, and well, she has a great story to tell. Barb, tell us what you got.
Hi, folks. This is Barb Payne with Reimagine Resiliency, coming to you in collaboration with EM Weekly again to offer our monthly video series on a variety of preparedness topics. This year in 2021, we are pulling from ready.gov, who offers multiple topics each month for folks to consider and to educate themselves on. This week, March 22nd to 26th, is Tsunami Awareness Week. And this is one of my favorite topics to discuss because it affects millions of people globally, from residents to tourists. And so what I'm going to be presenting y'all with is pictures that I've taken from my trip to Japan in 2017, and then other graphics and images that I've pulled offline. So the area that you can see on this map under Ken Tsunama is primarily where Rikuzen Takata was. I want to kind of show a before and after for this particular city of Rikuzen Takata. It's kind of close to my heart. When you see this picture, you see the mist in the background. This is right before the tsunami struck, and this is what was recorded from the buildings in the background. And so folks had no idea. There wasn't an alarm. They felt an earthquake. They didn't know the tsunami was coming. And so with only a 12-foot tall seawall, you can see the destruction. If you haven't already, via video or newscast, you can see the destruction that rained down upon the city of Rikuzen Takata with only a 12-foot seawall. And when the initial wave subsided, because the tsunami does come in and out a few different times, this is what the city looked like. It hadn't receded yet, but when the waves stopped coming back and forth, if you will, this is where houses ended up. As you can see, the city looks completely different. So with 18,000 people lost countrywide in Japan, $360 billion spent on recovery efforts, this is what Rikuzen Takata looks like today. And cities and prefectures have the option of recovering and using tactics at their disposal, and not following, a specific lead or any other specific prefecture or city or town. And so what Rikuzen Takata did in response to the tsunami was to build back. And so you can see the seawall way, in the foreground, if you will, closer to the mountains, even though it's hugging the coastline. And you can see how far back I was when I took this picture. The tsunami leveled the city, and after debris cleanup had been completed, this is what the city looked like. And as you can see, there are roads that have been constructed for recovery projects and whatnot, but they're building back much further back to where the city actually sat, which of course was right on the coastline. So interesting efforts from the Rikuzen Takata's city officials in their efforts to try to mitigate the next one. And this is one of my favorite pictures that I took on the trip. I actually posted it to LinkedIn, but if you can see the really tall gas sign at about 1 o'clock on this picture, that sign was used as a metric for the wave. So the wave was just as high as that gas sign. So picture a gas sign when you get off an interstate and how tall those are. That's how tall the wave was. And this is the building that I took that picture from, one of the only buildings that survived Rikuzen Takata. And of course, you can see the state that it was in when I took that picture in 2017. Interestingly enough, there's all kinds of marine debris still left in that building. And here's another kind of slow climb of a shot that I took when we were on the ground from our hike up into that building. So as you can see, I'm standing in a parking lot and taking that picture from about 15 feet down. As you can see, they've actually moved this sign and they're preserving it as one of the last pieces that survived the tsunami. On the right, you can see that 15-foot mark. It's always a respectful idea to get to know your culture before you visit another country, especially when you're visiting such a sensitive area as a disaster-prone city like Rikuzen Takata. This pine tree was the only one out of 70,000 trees that was left. And in 2018, they had removed it from that area in order to preserve it because the salt water had gotten the best of it. Through a special technique, they will be taking the tree apart, preserving it, and putting it back together for the communities in the area and for tourists. The next town that we visited was the town of Iwate. This is not the prefecture of Iwate, but the actual town. And their tactic was to build back kind of in a staggered, uphill, very wide and long staircase. And so they built a major wall out in front, as you can see right here. It's hard to tell you how big this thing is. It's at least 20 feet tall because they're trying to build as tall as the wave was that hit. But they build a huge wall right in the front, and then they stagger back from there. So unlike Rikuzen Takata, instead of building further back and having some barriers in place, Iwate put up a huge barrier. And then as you can see, the staggered, from the streets on the left and then kind of building up to the right and then up from there in order to mitigate. And so they are preparing for the tidal wave to hit them again and again. By keeping the area in front of the community where buildings are, where residences are, where roads are, where schools are, they build them back. And so when the tsunami comes back, which they expect it to do so over and over as it has done in Japan for so long, instead of taking out buildings, schools and hospitals, the wave would be taking out greenery, trees, bushes, shrubs, and that sort of thing. So if a tsunami hit, it would have little to no impact on the goings-on, the day-to-day goings-on in the actual community. Finally, one of the last cities that we visited was the city of Ishinomaki. And in Ishinomaki, it is very much a coastal town with a lot of inlets. This school was up from an inlet miles and miles away from the coast. And as you can see, it also did not survive the tsunami. It included 300 students and at least half a dozen teachers who were fleeing for their lives. And this is an interesting photo I thought I'd share as well. This is a steel light post that was bent over like a wet noodle when the tsunami came through the area of Ishinomaki. And Ishinomaki has gotten hit by tsunamis many, many times as well. Finally, a picture of our trip. You can see us. This is in Iwate with the big seawall and our counselors and our city official representatives and our trip leaders. And it was a fantastic trip that was offered by Portland State University in Portland, Oregon through the Initiative for Community Disaster Resilience. And the one piece that was shared by all city officials, all community leaders, anybody that was a survivor that decided to come back to the area, they shared this one specific piece of advice with us, is run. Do not try to help anybody. Do not try to grab your bag. You run, and you run as fast as you can to get to high ground because you only have about 15 or 20 minutes. And if you think just because you don't live on the coast that tsunamis could not be a part of your life, you are wrong. If you visit a coastline, tsunamis are a danger. And so know your ins and outs, your routes, be prepared, understand the topography, understand the risks. And if for more information, you can always go to ready.gov. You can tap Reimagine Resiliency or EM Weekly to get more fun facts on tsunami awareness and mitigation techniques.